I think we could be looking at a big surge coming for Bitcoin over the next 48 hours. I want to break down for you why in this video. But before we continue, this video is going up first exclusively on Twitter, on X. If you want to get all my content first, go ahead and check it out with the top link here. But the reason I'm saying this is that Bitcoin is in a sideways range here now that it's held for a little bit of time. And it's one of the theories that we were talking about. I'm glad to see it playing out because it means that Bitcoin's holding strong up at a resistance level. But what we understand about this resistance, and we're going to be going through a couple of things in this video that no one's really talking about. There are some big topics. I'm going to get to the biggest one in a couple of minutes. But, one of the big things that I think nobody's really talking about is the fact that, when we were falling below this $60,000 price range before, we never really found resistance on the way back up, right? Like, it was always a pretty quick, pretty easy ride back up every time we kind of fell below these price levels. So, this is the first time that we're actually struggling at this level, and I think that's important because, to me, it just shows me that this is probably just a bit of drama. It's a bit of nonsense. You could definitely interpret this as saying that the market has gotten weaker and we have to drop down, but then my response to you would be, why haven't we dropped down yet, right? Like, we've already been kind of holding at this level for a little bit of time now, and actually, just to put it in perspective, since the kind of time that we ended this price range until now, it has been over 10 days at this stage, right? So clearly, I think if we were going to get a rejection, it probably would have come in by now. But, on the flip side, when you kind of fall down to a support level and just move sideways there, eventually you're actually going to expect that that support level is going to break. So the same thing obviously has to apply with resistance. So I think that these levels are getting weaker. But there's a bigger argument here. There's a bigger thing going on in the background that I think is much more important. And those of you that are subscribed to this channel, you're going to know about this because we've been talking about this quite a lot on this YouTube channel at this stage, right? We've been talking a lot about how I've been expecting Bitcoin to kind of just move, in line with traditional finance. And if we take a look at traditional finance, I mean, the S&P 500 has just picked up phenomenally over here. It's another Monday open for the S&P 500 here. And if we take a look at this on the daily candles, this is what today looks like for the S&P 500, and we've got 42 minutes left, right? So by the time you watch this video, you're going to know what's happened. But I can tell you now, the S&P 500 has continued to skyrocket off this low that it set recently. And also the dollar has continued to drop, right? We've known that the dollar is in a zone where it could be seeing big drops for some time. And again, we've been talking about this a lot on this YouTube channel. So once again, I want to give a huge shout out to those of you that are staying subscribed or that are following on Twitter, where I'm posting even more kind of super cool analysis. You're going to know that we were dealing with this for some time, and we're now actually entering the bottom of the range that I was talking to you about. So I definitely think that the dollar can come as low as just 101 flat, basically, which is what this chart is showing us here. And that's still, quite a sizable further drop for the dollar. I think that it's obviously the main reason that the S&P 500 has done so well recently is because of the bloodbath going on with the dollar. But what we expect is that Bitcoin follows suit, right? And that obviously hasn't happened because I think, one of the big things that everybody is missing is see this big move here on Thursday, the 8th of August. If we take a look at this on the dollar, and see what the dollar was doing on this day, here's Thursday. Hang on, what are we looking at? Let me make sure I'm looking at the correct Thursday because that's a slightly wrong day. That's the 8th of August. So Thursday, the 8th of August would have been, here it was actually. So we saw a nice big move up for the dollar followed by a retracement. If we look at this on the hourly, we'll see that a little bit clearer. Big move up for the dollar, followed by the dollar continuing on down. And it was probably on this subsequent drop that you start seeing some strength coming in for Bitcoin. And we see this happening all the time, right? Bitcoin's got, at this point, quite a clear track record that it's proven for itself of moving up when the dollar moves down. So naturally, you would expect a nice Bitcoin rise coming in over here. But I think we've been seeing something interesting that I want to draw to your attention here. Take a look at this. So if we look at this just staying on the 1 hour time frame, but then throw the S&P 500 on top, we can kind of start to see how Bitcoin has been behaving in relation to the S&P 500. And I think this is actually really interesting. So bear with me here while I just get this chart kind of readable for you guys, because I know that my face is taking up a bit of the frame as well. But really what I want to focus your attention on is this peak over here, and specifically Bitcoin rallying up to this peak. I think that it was really interesting because if you watch the S&P 500, we can put a couple of vertical lines down, right, in the same kind of place on these two charts. And what you'll see is that the S&P 500, was rallying, was falling down, between these two green lines. But between here, Bitcoin continued to move up, and in fact, Bitcoin continued to move up right up until this point here, which shows me that Bitcoin was kind of lagging behind the S&P 500. It's really funny because to me, the story that this tells me is, and first we have to just we can't continue this conversation without first acknowledging that Bitcoin and the S&P 500 obviously have a very, very clear correlation, right? They have done for a very long time. For some reason, there have always been people that disagree with this statement and that, have a big problem with me saying this, but the data is in front of you. Many of you guys watching have gone and checked it yourselves. Anyone who contests what I'm saying just clearly hasn't looked at it. But if you doubt me, then just go ahead and look yourself and see if you come to the same conclusion. But if we bring it back to the chart here, I think what's really interesting is obviously we have that clear that clear correlation between between Bitcoin and the S&P 500, where when S&P moves down, Bitcoin tends to move down, and when S&P moves up, Bitcoin tends to move up, right? We've seen that for some time, but over here, Bitcoin was lagging behind a little bit. And the reason that's important is because the S&P 500, obviously, it kept on dropping until about this point here, right? This was kind of the worst of the drops for the S&P 500, right where it bottomed out over here. And Bitcoin, comparatively, it started to only drop, a little bit later on. So it's almost like Bitcoin was just kind of living in its own world, but then snapped back to reality. But then it continued to fall. And I think this is what's really, really interesting, right? So see, the S&P 500 kind of bottomed out right around over here, but Bitcoin didn't continue, didn't stop falling over the weekend, right? This is a weekend here, this trading session, and Bitcoin continued to fall while the S&P 500 obviously was closed for trading. And then when Bitcoin started to, when the S&P 500 started to recover, Bitcoin only followed up until this point here. This is really interesting, right? Bitcoin only kind of continued to recover up until the high that it set on the 8th of August, which was right around over here. But from that point onwards, the S&P 500, it kept on moving up. The S&P 500 kept on moving up, but Bitcoin clearly didn't, right? If we, I can't take this circle over, but if we go ahead and take, a circle over to Bitcoin and take a look at what this circle is saying, I think what's very clear is that, just trace the screen on my right-hand side. You can see how my crosshair is moving. Bitcoin continued to kind of trend downwards while the S&P is looking pretty strong. And again, what's really important is that this happened on a weekend, right? So, to me, what this is looking like, everything I've just shown you, right? Whether it's, Bitcoin rallying up while the S&P is already dropping, or dropping a little bit late and then continuing to drop after the S&P. To me, all of these things just look like Bitcoin is still following the S&P 500. It's just a little bit delayed, okay? And the reason that that's a really big deal is because if we do go ahead and take a look at the S&P 500 here, it has formed a pretty much complete recovery at this point, right? I mean, it's been rallying up phenomenally, much faster than the first time that it came up, mind you. I mean, to put this in perspective, from its low up to its current level now, it's up by 9.3%, but crucially, it's only taken 14 days. And if you look at the same kind of area for the S&P 500 before to get up to the same kind of price level, it's a slightly smaller move at about 8%, but it's taken 37 days. Or from this point to get back up to these highs, it took 80 days, right? So this is a very quick move up for the S&P 500, and it's basically broken all of its resistance levels, and it's at a time where the dollar is dropping down, which to me, you've now painted every single facet, not facet, like part, you painted every single part of the image, in my view, of traditional finance looking strong and Bitcoin having to follow suit. But obviously, we know what's happened. Bitcoin hasn't followed. Bitcoin has continued to show weakness here, which is what I think is so damn interesting. But to me, I'm not really worried about it. I just think that Bitcoin's got that chance to continue to rally up over the next couple of days, right? Now we've got a full trading week up ahead, and so any kind of anomalies that have taken place over the weekend, they have an entire working week to resolve themselves now. And, in a normal circumstance, it'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? This isn't such a big deal. But clearly, Bitcoin has been lagging behind the S&P 500 because it's been doing whatever the S&P 500 has been doing. It's just been a little bit delayed, right? Where the S&P started dropping, Bitcoin took a couple of days to kind of look left and right and be like, oh yeah, I meant to be dropping too. And then Bitcoin followed suit, and it followed suit in an even more intense way. Same thing with the rises back up, right? Right now, we're lagging behind a little bit, but I think that, kind of with our technical setup, we're poised to rise up quite well. I still obviously believe that this is going to depend on traditional finance, but now, the S&P 500 has such a beautiful level of support to kind of come back down to capture a bit of support that I just can't be worried, right? I mean, after such a big rally like this, coming off this low, moving up so quickly, it really does tell you a story of quite serious strength in the market. And so if the S&P 500 index does end up coming back down here, I'm just going to have to expect that it finds support and then continues to move up. So I think that Bitcoin, from that particular perspective is also in a pretty good spot. And I just think technically, right, this is what I started the video off. I just think that technically Bitcoin is still also in a good spot. I mean, we've seen Bitcoin continue to battle the $60,000 resistance. And it's printed really nice kind of support down here, which I've been talking about. And it's definitely been tradable as well. I mean, if you take a look at some of the trading opportunities that have come in over here, from this low up to this high, you're only getting a 5.4% range, but you're getting a pretty easy stop loss kind of placement here and a nice target, just easy price levels to be trading between, even if it's from this low up to this first resistance zone. That's still 3.5%. And so, on 10x leverage, these are 35-50% profits, which are really good. Obviously, the best place to be trading these markets are going to be on Blowfin and Bybit. You can find their links down below. Blowfin is, of course, a no KYC platform, so no pictures of yourself or your ID. But as usual, before you use any of these platforms, you do just have to double check that you are complying with your country's local laws and regulations, right? Because some countries have actually banned the use of these exchanges, so you want to make sure that you are not breaking the laws in your country. But yeah, if we do bring it back to Bitcoin here and we talk a little bit about this sideways range here, like I said, I mean, we've been hitting it for a little bit. I don't really expect it to be a particularly problematic zone. And also, if you just look at it from this, more naked chart here, I mean, we've got a really typical kind of setup here where the market kind of rallied upwards and it's now trending down a little bit, consolidating, getting ready for that next move, potentially ready to take that next big leg up again, which of course, as we know, forms that super typical kind of staircase pattern. We see it kind of play out a lot in these markets, and we're seeing it happen again right now in front of us. I think, the other thing that really makes me feel quite positive about Bitcoin is just the fact that, I mean, we've seen sentiment reset to very low levels, right? I mean, even right now, we're pretty low, right? We're at a reading of 28. In the next 4.5 hours, it might update. Last week, we were at extreme fear. Yesterday, we were at 31, which is still on the edge of extreme fear. I mean, this market is in a very bad place in terms of sentiment right now, but in terms of price, we're in a really good place. So that's still definitely looking good to me. The Binance long and short ratios have been a problem for a while, and they've kind of been preventing me from going like giga excited in terms of my stance here. Obviously, if we take a look at this here, we've got 65% longs just in a very small time frame of 5 minutes here. But if we look at this on the daily, we're still 60% long consistently, 58, 70, 68. I mean, many more longs coming in than shorts for Binance retail traders here, which has definitely been, I think, one of the leading factors kind of pushing Bitcoin lower. But, I think that this is kind of still mostly done. I mean, I can't be too concerned about it at this stage. It's one factor. It's working against me, and I'm not happy about it. But I think that other factors are still pretty strong, and they're still definitely indicating that there's going to be, a little bit more upside to be coming for Bitcoin because of just how kind of absolutely wrecked the sentiment is, while the price is still in a high place. And I think those of you that have been watching me for a long time, that have been subscribed to this channel over the months and years, you're going to know that actually I personally really like to look for setups where I'm seeing very low sentiment levels at very high prices, right? Because that shows me that now we're kind of seeing a nice kind of a flush out, a bit of a reset in terms of sentiment, and that obviously always works well, in terms of allowing the market to rally up. So I'm definitely quite happy with that, with what I'm seeing there as well. So I think that that's definitely pretty interesting. I'm going to continue to kind of watch this and see how it goes, but resistance up ahead, I can't see it being a particularly large issue. If we take a look at some of our key indicators here, we're still getting nothing from the 4-hour Ichimoku cloud. from the 4-hour EMA ribbon, we're also getting nothing. But if we look at this on the daily, those two indicators are still offering a bit of a challenge to Bitcoin right now. I think it's continued to provide some resistance to Bitcoin on the daily, but we have been encountering this particular resistance EMA ribbon now for, like I said, about 10, 11 days at this stage, maybe even 12, depending on how you count it. So, you know, we've definitely been dealing with this for a little bit now, and, you know, it would make sense if we're able to start kind of bringing the courage to start breaking it. If we take a look at this Ichimoku cloud, we do still have resistance, but it's so thin now that if Bitcoin does end up taking that opportunity over the next kind of 48 hours, I think it could be absolutely huge for Bitcoin. I think it could result in Bitcoin breaking through these resistance levels like a knife through a hot knife through butter. Pardon me, guys. I am not going to edit the video to take that out. That's too much effort for 2 sneezes. So we're going to keep those sneezes in. But yeah, the Ichimoku cloud, I think, you know, very, very clearly showing us that, you know, there's a huge window of opportunity right now for this market. So I'm definitely eager to see if Bitcoin can take advantage of it. But equally, I think, like I said, you know, we got 2 key levels of invalidation. You know, if this thing does end up going bearish, I think the first key level of invalidation is just going to be this kind of local low that we've been holding for a little bit at $58,000. If you get below that, I think that next low at 56 is going to be inevitable. And if you get down there, I think we're falling down to 52. I think, you know, you really don't want to see 58k lost, right? At this stage, if you see that 58k is lost, you know, you're not really moving forward. You're not really making progress. That doesn't mean like that I think we're guaranteed to go down to 52, but I think the chance would be very, very high. And especially if 56k breaks. If 56k breaks, there's no more kind of ambiguity here or being unsure, in my opinion. I would be absolutely certain that if we lose 56k, that we're going to be coming back down to 52, or at least as certain as I can ever be as a trader. Not something I would trade. There's not enough money in these kind of positions for me, but, you know, I'm definitely keen on seeing that this level holds, you know, and then that we potentially kind of slice through the resistance levels up ahead. I think, yeah, if 58k holds, like I said, a little bit of support still to be found here, but I just can't have high expectations. I think at this stage the market has failed too many opportunities, you know, and you can't just be silly about it the whole way and, you know, just keep giving the market the benefit of the doubt. So I think we're pretty much at that stage right now. But like I said, you know, a strong traditional finance environment, you know, how can I be bearish on this Bitcoin market? You know, it would just be illogical. You know, I think with the dollar dropping as well, to me, it just looks like a pretty clear-cut case of Bitcoin lagging behind a little bit, but potentially, you know, having the opportunity to catch up very, very soon. If we take a quick look at Bitcoin's dominance, just as of the beginning of this month, we have risen up to very, very high levels on Bitcoin's dominance. Again, exactly what I've been expecting on this channel. Shout out to those of you that are liked and subscribed to this YouTube channel, especially with the bell icon checked that you're going to find up here to get notifications of my uploads. You're going to know a lot about this, and, you know, we're just continuing to look strong in that way. I mean, we're continuing to hold high Bitcoin dominance levels. We haven't come back down to these 54 levels for a month now, so I think we have quite conclusively moved up. I mean, is it possible that we come back down? Absolutely, but I think that at this stage, it looks like the market has taken its lift off again. The last time that the market took its lift off was back here in January of 2024, and obviously we haven't returned back down to those levels since then. So I think that we are looking pretty good from this particular perspective as well. Ladies and gents, I am going to have to call it with that one, though. If you have enjoyed it, do me a favor and smash up those likes. And like I said, go ahead and check out X. This video was uploaded first to X. You're going to be getting more content from me there on these markets. So if you want some more exclusive stuff, go ahead and check it out. But with that, ladies and gents, I really hope you've enjoyed this one, and I'll see you all in the next one. Cheers.